Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Shannon, I'm the Wisdom Wench, and in today's video I would like to talk you through my process of beginning to connect with plant spirits, which is something that I know a lot of people are interested in, so I'm going to show you my way to do it. So get comfy, get cozy, get a cup of tea, and let's get started. There are many reasons that people want to connect with the spirits of plants. So for me, when I'm really diving into the medicine of a particular plant, and I'm, for example, doing the plant profiles, I like to really try and connect with the plant spirit. This isn't a new idea. This is something that's been happening for centuries. When we look at a lot of indigenous knowledge when it comes to plant medicines, they often will say, well, when asked, how do you know that the plant does this? You'd often hear back, well, the plant told us. This is the connection to plant spirit aspect of it. And for me, connecting with plant spirit is an act of devotion. So I create an altar to that plant when I'm trying to connect with its spirit. Especially in winter, like I'm recording this in February, the outside world's still very much asleep, especially in my garden. There's really not that much up. So creating a little altar to the plants and having aspects of the plants on there, you can have pictures of it, whatever you feel like, is a really lovely way to start connecting with the medicine of that plant and the spirit of that plant. So I'm going to show you how I create my plant connection altars, how I create a devotional space to a plant, and how I use it. And then we'll come back and I'll tell you a bit more about some fun things you can do while connecting to plants. To begin creating the altar, I started by collecting some of the plant that the altar would be centered around. As this was dandelion, I took some of the leaf and some of the root. Before starting anything with the altar, I wanted to sit and get a sense of the plant itself. So I made a cup of tea and I set up with the plant. I chose to use the leaf for this part of the tea. I decided that I wanted to do a meditation with the plant, getting a real sense of it. I spent time taking in all of the details, really sitting and looking at the colour of the dried leaves. As soon you'll realise it's not just green, but there are browns and there are shades of almost purples and reds in there too. I then sat and took time to really taste the tea, smell the tea, and use all of my senses to truly experience the plant and how that felt for me. I knew I wanted to have some of the leaf and some of the root on the altar, so I took 2 small jam jars and I filled one with the root and one with the leaf, and this would take place on the altar. The next thing I had to do was begin clearing off the old altar, and mine was full of bits and pieces. One of my favourite points of starting an altar is the clearing it off process and resetting everything at 0. Once it's cleared, I sat with it for just a little while. The empty space, the fresh energy. I like to sit with the blank slate, and I decided to sit with the plant that I was going to use. Once that was done, I decided to cleanse it, and I always use smoke cleansing. That is my go-to. I've got a juniper stick here. When it's time to start rebuilding the altar, I always start by adding in my cornerstones. So for me, these are these 2 candles. It's my goddess candle from the goddess temple in Glastonbury, and then my Taurus candle from Starchild. I then added in the plant matter and the cup in front just to give me a rough idea of where everything would sit. Then I started adding lots of different bits and pieces to the altar. I added citrine and some quartzes, mostly yellow stones and white stones to represent the two phases of the dandelion, the bright yellow flower and then the white puffball seed head. I also added a few coins to the altar. I added some keys, I added a wand and a little pot of gold as well. Dandelion is associated with Jupiter, so I tried to add a few symbols of that in there as well. I personally see dandelion as a very active plant, so adding things like the key and the wand, they're both symbols of doing, of acting, of taking action, and that's what I really wanted to represent on this altar. Change is a process of action, and I wanted to represent that through all the pieces that I've used. On the shelf underneath, I always add bits of pieces from my current practice, a notepad, a pen, and a little bowl for scrying. This I will change out pretty regularly, but that's kind of what I'm into. The fun part comes next, and that is lighting the altar, because this comes alive at night. Next up is using the altar. So I took you through a morning of how I practice with the altar, and it always begins with a cup of tea. This is just the dandelion leaf tea that I was having before. I like to do this just as the sun is still rising. If I'm trying to connect with the plant, I like to use it first thing in the morning when I've had nothing but water, so that I know that I'm feeling the full effect of the plant. I also like to put on an incense in the morning. This just helps me ground myself before preparing the tea, so I can start my little ritual practice. The next part is very simple. I just sit at the altar, I sit with the tea, and I really just take in the feeling of the plant, where I feel it in my body, how I experience it, and just spend the time to be totally and completely present. Write down any thoughts that come up, any messages, anything I hear, anything I want to explore. And I find that every plant will bring up its own little messages, its own little ideas that I can then work through. When I'm done with my practice, I simply blow out the candles, and that is my signifier. There's no set time that you have to sit here for, but I will normally sit here just for the length of the incense stick. And then I'm ready to carry on with my day. Now, you absolutely do not have to create an altar to a plant to connect with it. My favourite way to connect with plants is to just be outside with the plant. Go and visit it each day, watch it go through its life cycle, connect with it that way. But sometimes that's not always possible, and sometimes you feel connection to a plant that maybe doesn't grow near you or wouldn't grow very well in your current climate, in your current place in the world. I've always done devotional altars, but not necessarily to a plant. It would normally be to a theme. So when I started making my cacao altars, everything kind of went from there. So this altar I made to dandelion, and I was sparked because I had the first dandelion of the year pop up in my garden only a couple days ago. It has already gone, so it popped up and then it went away. But it was a lovely little spark to see. It was the tiniest little sign that life is coming back to the world, and it was really lovely. So I decided to make my devotional altar to dandelion. You can do anything with your devotional altar. You can add pictures, the fresh plant if you've got any, if you can harvest some of the fresh plant. I love to put that on my altar. I've done that with like rosemary, and I've done that with pine, and it's really nice to have the plant in its different aspects there. So the dried plant matter that you might use in a tea, plus the fresh plant matter there as well. You can do any kind of practice. I like to meditate, and I like to just kind of spend time and embody the plant and its life cycles. You can sit and you can listen for messages or what that triggers within yourself. So some people, and I definitely find this in myself, that I will sit with a plant and then I'll have an instant thought or an instant feeling or an instant idea. And rather than with the meditation you do when you're trying to sit and be really present, I really hold on to what comes up there. What am I trying to be told? What is that sparking in me? What feelings are coming up for myself? And then I write it all down, I take notes. I don't explore it then and there, but keep it as a thing for a later date to really look into. I find that I can struggle with a busy mind. My thoughts are everywhere. I'm all over the place. And so sometimes sitting and connecting with a plant outdoors doesn't always work. Some people have a very instant connection. I find that I don't really have that. A couple times with some plants, I will get really, really drawn to them. But for me, building a relationship with a plant spirit and working with a plant spirit is a very slow, intentional and meaningful act, an act of devotion, an act of time. And I really like to take the space and the time to devote, and having an indoor altar as well also really works for me. Sometimes I just can't get outside to the plant, especially if it's not a plant that I have like in my back garden. Some days I'm just so busy and I will get home when it's dark outside, and being able to just sit at the altar and light a candle and sit with the plant that way is enough. I don't need to, and I'm not going to, more importantly, traipse through the woods in the middle of the night to find a particular tree. It's not happening. But I can sit with a bit of it at my altar inside my home. And what I love about it, when I create the altars, I try and have as many natural things on there as possible so that it can be composted when my next altar starts. And you can choose to do this with moon phases, seasons, holidays that are really important to you. You can pick a plant that you're very drawn to. You can pick a plant that maybe you're interested in forming a relationship with, but you don't know how you feel yet. And I like to keep the altar nice and small. I think that's a big thing for me. I used to have these really big, beautiful altars, and if you've been on this channel a while, you've seen me kind of do some resets. And I found that I just never sat at them and I never used them. But since going to a much smaller, more concentrated altar, I use it pretty much every day. And I love sitting there. It's simplified. It's a space where I can go and I can rest there, and the energy can rest there, and I can just be with it. And I love that. I love having a very small, very intentional and purposeful altar. And when I'm trying to connect with plant spirit, that's what I'm going for, the intention. I have a few things I've always got there. Now is a notepad and pen, a divination tool of some kind. I like to have my tarot cards. You know me, I am a tarot reader. That's my go-to, so I always have my tarot cards there. But sometimes I'm drawn to a particular form of maybe divination or spirit connection, and I'll have that there instead. So I've been really into water scrying at the moment. So I've got you saw a little bowl that I put underneath the altar, and I can fill that with water, and I'll drip wax from one of my candles in it and just read the shapes. Water scrying is a really lovely, very natural way of trying to get some messages, and you can divine a lot from those, the shapes that come up in the wax, and sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're a little left field, and that's fine. And it's that act of presence and peace that we're there for when we're looking for that kind of connection. For me, devotion is what creates connection. It's not the other way around. For some people, it's connection sparks devotion. And for me, it's devotion sparks connection. And that's more important to me and the way I practice. So that's the way I choose to do it. Thank you so much for being here with me on today's video. I know it's a quick one. I know it took me longer to get out than normal. I had some life happen. But we're back. We're back now. Pop any questions that you might have about plants, plant altars, in the comments below, and I'll answer them the best I can. If I have enough, I'll make a follow-up video. So thank you so much for being here with me today. Have a lovely rest of your day, whatever time you're watching this, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day, guys. Bye. Pop that in somewhere. I should have written a script. I also don't know if I'm in focus. This is an ongoing game, and you know what? I had a whole setup where I fixed this issue, but I've got to leave my house in 10 minutes. And also holding the mic makes my hand look really big, but I didn't want to deal with my hair, and if I clip it and then my hair, I need to leave, but I wanted to record. I do this for you guys. I do it for you. Okay, I'm off. I gotta go.